Welcome to our service for Sunday, the 30th of May, for Monton Unitarian Church's community. And our theme this week is the power of stories, the power of names. But as always, I'll begin by lighting our chalice candle. Some words first by Erica Hewitt and then by Jennifer Kitchen. Welcome to this day, this opportunity to be together in community, which is a time of joy, comfort, and sometimes challenges. This community is a place where we come to learn more about being human. We're not here because we've figured out life's questions or because we think we've got it right. We come here to learn more about being in relationship together, how to listen, how to forgive, how to be vulnerable, how to create trust and compassion in one another. Let us move into worship, willing to be authentic with each other, honest within ourselves, and open to connection in all its forms. And by Jennifer Kitchen. Come sit by our fire and let us share stories. Let me hear your tales of far-off lands, wanderer, and I will tell you of my travels. Share your experience of the holy with me, worshipper, and I will tell you of that which I find divine. Come and stay, lover of leaving, for ours is no caravan of despair, but of hope. We would hear your stories of grief and sorrow as readily as those of joy and laughter, for there is a time and a place and a hearing for all the stories of this world. Stories are the breath and word of the Spirit of life, that power that we name love. Come, for our fire is warm, and we have seats for all. Come again, and yet again, come speak to me of what fills your heart, what engages your mind, what resides in your soul. Come, let us worship together. And so let us join together in a time of prayer. And these words were written by Lynn Cox. Spirit of life, ancestor of the stars and the sun, you who embrace the vastness of space and us along with it, be with us today. Hold us in our worry, our exhaustion, our grief, and our joy, excitement, and anticipation. Keep us close as we sit with our truth, whatever that may be. Lead us to rest in the quiet, to find healing and renewal in this time of companionship. You whose arms open with the spinning galaxies, help us to make room as you do for all that is. Open our hearts to our loved ones, our neighbours, the beings with whom we share this planet. Lead us to reach out to others in compassion. Turn us towards one another in mercy, right relationship and reconciliation. You who have seen the rising and setting of suns, of seasons, of civilizations, remind us of all that we have learned from the history of the world and from our own histories. Give us the courage to face our mistakes and to repair them wherever possible. Help us understand our interdependence, our gravitational relatedness with all of the other spinning lives around us, and lead us to treat those relationships with care. In this space and time, filled with the people among us who shine like stars, this space and time filled with the sparkle of love and care, we give thanks for this moment to be together. May our senses be open to the beauty of this day, this season, this world. Amen. In a service about stories, you have to have a story. This story, called The Two Champions, was written by Anthony Nansen, after a story he heard from the English storyteller Richard Walker, who in turn heard it from the American storyteller Dan Kading, who shaped the story around a saying he was told by his Serbian mother. And why do I tell you all of that? Because that's part of this story's story. And telling our stories and naming our names is what this service is all about. So I'd better tell you the story. There were two kingdoms that share a common border. In one country, they worshipped the sun. In the other, they worshipped the moon. Well, because of their religious differences, as often happens in our world, the two kingdoms ended up going to war. Each gathered an army, and the two armies met at the frontier. Row upon row of warriors, sunlight glinting on their war gear, faced each other across the no man's land. Well, because these warriors had a little bit of sense, it was agreed that rather than throw all the warriors into battle straight at once, each army should send forward a champion to fight in single combat. The strongest, most skillful warrior in each army was selected. The two men advanced towards each other, grim-faced, a sword in one hand, a shield in the other. On the chest of one was emblazoned an image of the sun, on the chest of the other an image of the moon. When they met, they fought like demons. They fought all morning long as the sun rose higher in the sky. They fought through the midday heat when the sun was at its zenith and the rest of the armies had gone for lunch. They fought on as the sun descended towards the west. They were both such strong and skillful fighters that neither man could gain the advantage. They were still fighting, nose to nose, locked in each other's arms, when at last the sun went down. The other two lots had gone back to their camps and gone to bed. But by that point, the two warriors were exhausted. They both collapsed on the ground, too feeble even to crawl back to the camps their respective armies had made for the night. "I hate you," groaned the champion of the sun. "I hate you," replied the champion of the moon. "I have to kill you," said the champion of the sun. "Back home I have a wife who loves me and a little boy who wants to be a warrior like me. I have to protect them from the likes of you." "I had a wife," said the champion of the moon. "Your people killed her in the last war. That's why I have to kill you." The moon rose. There was silence for a moment. Presently the champion of the sun asked the other man, "What was she like, your wife?" "Oh, she was lovely. We've been sweethearts since we were children. I used to play with her in the woods near here." "Sounds like you had a happy childhood," said the champion of the sun. "Not like mine. My father made us work all day in the fields, and he'd beat us if we complained." "I'm sorry to hear that," said the champion of the moon. And so they talked about their childhoods and all the other things they'd done in their lives. They talked and they talked as the moon rose higher in the sky. And still they talked as the moon went lower in the sky. Only for the last hour or two of the night did they sleep. Side by side they lay, their swords and shields dumped beside them. The sky turned grey and then pink in the east. Sounds and smells of breakfast-making emanated from the two camps. The two sleeping champions were woken by the warmth of sunshine on their faces. Wearily, painfully, they creaked to their feet. And then they looked into each other's eyes. And then they embraced. And leaving their swords and shields behind, they walked back to their respective armies. They could not fight each other any more, for you cannot fight someone when you know their story. Our second reading is by David S. Blanchard. It's called Listening for Our Song. On sabbatical in East Africa, I heard a story of a people who believe that we are each created with our own song. Their tradition as a community is to honour that song by singing it as welcome when a child is born, as comfort when the child is ill, in celebration when the child marries, and in affirmation and love when death comes. Most of us were not welcomed into the world in that way. Few of us seem to know our song. It takes a while for many of us to figure out which is our song, and which is the song that others would like us to sing. Some of us are slow learners. I heard my song not necessarily from doing extraordinary things in exotic places, but also from doing some pretty ordinary things in some routine places. For every phrase I heard climbing Kilimanjaro, I learned another in a chair in a therapist's office. For every measure I heard in the silence of a retreat, I heard another laughing with my girls. For every note I heard in the wind on the beach at Lamu, I gleaned more from spending time with a dying friend as her children sang her song back to her. What came to astound me was not that the song appeared, but that it was always there. I figure that the only way I could have known it for my own was if I had heard it before memory went to work making sense and order of the mystery of our beginning. Our songs sing back to us something of our essence, something of our truth, something of our uniqueness. When our songs are sung back to us, it is not about approval, but about recognizing our being and our belonging in the human family. It is good to know our songs by heart for those lonely times when the world is not singing them back to us. That's usually a good time to start humming to yourself that song that is most your own. They can be heard as songs of love or of longing, songs of encouragement or of comfort, songs of struggle or of security. But most of all, they are the songs of life, giving testimony to what has been, giving praise for all we're given, giving hope for all we strive for, giving voice to the great mystery that carries each of us in and out of this world. That was Listening for Our Song by David S. Blanchard. So let's join together again in a time of prayer. And this was written by Mandy McGlynn. Spirit of life and love, Holy One of our being and our becoming, that which is sacred within, among, and beyond us. We know so many stories about you, God, Lord, Father, Earth Mother, Great Spirit, Universe, Holy Parent, Divine Love, Deepest Longing. We know stories about our country and its founding too, of the values we claim as a people. We have stories about those narratives and about how our values have and have not manifested in our reality. Blessed One, we also know so many stories about ourselves, some of them the same stories we tell about others. Beautiful, ugly, simple, difficult, joyous, useful, worthless. Stories about who we are, what we know, and the potentials and impossibilities of our future. Stories about our purpose and the meaning of our lives. We have countless stories buried too deep in our souls for us to even recognize them. God of discovery, help us find the strength to excavate those buried stories. Let us lean on one another as we brush them off, hold them up to the light and find their meaning and use. May our roots nourish us so that we might grow abundantly and flower into blessings for one another and the world. Above all, Holy Parent, sing us a gentle lullaby. In the trees and the wind, in the kind words of our neighbours, in the warmth of the sun and the sparkle of the snow, whisper to us the truest story you know, and sing it to us in notes we can never unhear. Remind us every day, every moment, that we are loved. We are loved. We are loved. Amen. I am not a number. I am a free man, was the mantra, chanted on each episode of The Prisoner. A dramatised debate on individuality and freedom. The story centres around McGowan, a man who finds himself living in a mysterious, self-contained, cosmopolitan community known as The Village. The village's inhabitants are known merely by numbers. McGowan is number 6. Number 6 chooses not to give in to village authorities, but struggles to maintain his own identity. "I will not make any deals with you," he pointedly remarks to number 2. "I've resigned. I will not be pushed, filed, stamped, indexed, debriefed, or numbered. My life is my own." There is power in a name. In ancient myths of both East and West, to know the name of a god or spirit was to hold power over it. It's a theme that still holds true today. It's used beautifully in the modern fantasy works of novelist Ursula K. Le Guin, for example. And who doesn't remember the princess at the end of the never-ending story begging Akeu to say her name before her world was destroyed? And often people say that knowledge, the ability to name what is happening or what has gone wrong, is power. With illness, for example, it often feels more manageable once there is a diagnosis, however awful that diagnosis might be. Being able to name the previously unknown gives us power. Think about your personal name for a moment. It's so powerful that your brain can hear someone saying your name across a crowded room. Ever since you were born, people around you have been using it to name and define you. "Look at what Anna did. Aren't a clever girl you are?" links the name with the emotion of being clever. "I love you, Anna," links the name with feeling loved. Sadly, in the same way, "Don't be so stupid, Anna," and "Why are you so useless, Anna?" and other statements like that can link a name with criticism and shaming. All these emotions, some uplifting, some devastating, are stored into the single focal point of your name. Try saying your full name out loud to yourself, and you can feel the emotions contained within this powerful symbol. How does your name make you feel? As Hiroki Nisato says, "This is why it's so important to take good care of other people's names. We cherish the sound of our name being spoken with love by those closest to us. We also feel the pain upon hearing our name being used in a blaming, critical, or belittling way. And then there is the case of no one calling our name ever. What happens then? We become invisible. There is no me. That's what abandonment feels like. And the name stores that emotion too. The reduction of a person to a number, as in The Prisoner, is an awful thing. I am not a number. I am a free man with a name of my own. It's one of the reasons why in the commemorations of the Manchester bomb last week, among lots of symbols of 22, the number of victims who died, great pain was taken to make sure each person's name was said aloud and heard. These were not just nameless victims. They were each people with their own names and their own stories. So often we are just given numbers. In the pandemic of this past year, we have had numbers every day. So many infections, so many hospitalised, so many died. Numbers of hate crimes, numbers of deaths on the road, numbers of unemployed, numbers living on poverty and reliant on food banks. In the most recent 11 days of fighting between Israel and Palestine, 12 Israelis were killed, including 2 children, and over 230 Palestinians were killed, including around 70 children. In the 7/7 bombings in London, 52 UK residents were killed and more than 700 injured. From World War I, through the Bolsheviks and Stalin's reign of terror to the end of World War II, over 85 million Russians were killed. The numbers are mind-numbing. And just as each of the 22 victims of the Manchester bomb deserved their stories to be told and names to be heard, so does each other victim. Indeed, so does each and every human being in whatever circumstance. It makes a difference. In Gaza, for example, we hear the story of Marwan Youssef Attallah al-Masri, Ibrahim Youssef Attallah al-Masri, Rahaf Mohammed Attallah al-Masri, Ahmed Mohammed Attallah al-Masri, and Yazan Sultan Attallah al-Masri. As their names indicate, they are related, brothers and cousins. They were packing straw for livestock to be able to buy new clothes for the Eid, the mother of Ibrahim and Marwan said through tears. Instead of modelling new clothes, they were dressed in blood. They were children, and they were not holding any weapons or rockets. Rather, they were holding their dreams for a better life, or simply for a new dress. What made things worse is that Mohammed al-Masri lost his wife during 2014 war. He was badly injured in this attack and lost 2 more loved ones, his daughter and brother. And Ahmed al-Masri's wedding was supposed to be a few days after Eid. Somehow it makes a difference when you know their names and a little of their stories, which is why so much reconciliation work is based on personal encounter. At the start of 2014, community activists Ali Abu Awad and Rabbi Hanan Schlesinger, along with others, formed Roots, a group based in the West Bank area of Gush Etzion, to promote dialogue and, eventually, trust between Israelis and Palestinians as a path to peace. The group's full name is Roots Judo Shorashim, the Palestinian-Israeli Initiative for Understanding, Non-Violence and Reconciliation. And it organises meetings between Israelis and Palestinians who live near each other in the West Bank in order to create dialogue. The project's outreach programme includes monthly meetings between Israeli and Palestinian families, a women's group, work with school children, engaging local leaders, a summer camp, language learning and cultural exchanges. Because when you know someone's story and can see how familiar it is to yours, it is so much harder to hate and so much easier to find common ground. So there is power in our names and power in our stories. But there is also potential for change. Just because our stories have started out in one particular direction does not mean that we are bound on that trajectory for the rest of our lives. Just because during our childhood our names were said with contempt or dislike or boredom even, does not mean that we must forever feel contemptible or disliked or unwanted. We can change the narrative. In some old cultures like ancient Japan or Native American culture, changing the narrative was actually a rite of passage. You were given a child name at birth and then later received your adult name when you were old enough. This enabled each person to move past the childish identity attached to their name, along with any sense of insecurity or powerlessness or any negative feelings or attitudes, and become a strong adult who has another chance to shape their own identity. Changing names still happens today. When couples marry, one often takes the other's surname. Or when a trans person claims their new identity, they also claim their new name as an indicator of that transition, and a ceremony is often held to celebrate the emergence of that new identity. Of course, you don't have to change your name for that. Any of us can realise that we need to change at times, to leave parts of our story that we have outgrown behind and move towards our next stage. Our names and our stories are powerful, both in terms of their power over us and in terms of how they can change another's perspective of us or indeed of themselves. When the champions of the moon and the sun heard each other's stories and saw each other as real people rather than as enemy, they could no longer fight, but instead became friends. When you know someone else's story, you can empathize, understand their motivations and their responses without judgment or fear. And when you know and acknowledge your own story, you can understand better some of your reactions, responses, and prejudices, and learn to change them. The myth is real. By knowing someone's name, by knowing someone's story, and by speaking clearly our own name and story, we have power. We have power to share a blessing. We have power to learn. We have power to grow a little closer to others, both near and far. So may it always be. And our blessing today was written by Jean Olson. May you be brave enough to expose your aching woundedness and reveal your vulnerability. May you speak your deepest truths, knowing that they will change as you do. May you sing the music within you, composing your own melody, playing your song with all your heart. May you draw, paint, sculpt and sew, showing the world your vision. May you write letters, poetry, biography, slogans, graffiti, the great novel, laying bare your words to love and hate. May you love, even though your heart breaks again and again. and until the end of your days, may your life be filled with possibilities and courage. Amen. Thank you so much for joining me again this week, and apologies for the coughing fit in the middle. These things happen. I will see you again, same time next week, you in your home and me in mine, together in our hearts. Until then, stay safe, stay strong, and know that you are loved.